Today, my name is Tom McSpiritt. I'm a senior solutions engineer with Couchbase. I've been with Couchbase just over 4 years, and I've been working in the database space for quite some time. And I'm based in New Jersey. I'm happy to be here present at Cloud Field Day. So today we're going to go through, or I'm going to go through, a Capella demo. So what are we going to see today? So we're going to see, what's happening behind the scenes in Capella. We'll review just a sample Capella DBaaS configuration. We'll look at some documents. We'll look at an index definition. We'll look at a full text search and index. And the idea behind it is what Jeff mentioned previously, is that we're a multi-model data platform, we like to call ourselves. So depending on what your application is trying to accomplish, we offer you different data access patterns using our SDKs to build your application. So in this latter part of the demo, we'll just go through some quick examples via our what we call our Couchbase Playground, a key value get, some SQL plus query, a sub-document lookup, and then also a search query string. So I'll just jump right into the demo. So first of all, I'm just going to log into our field engineering tenancy in Capella. So again, this is a Capella tenancy. We were field engineering tenancy, so all the field engineers from Couchbase globally share this tenancy to do demos, learn about Capella, any new features that are coming about. So what I did is I created a cluster called testcb. I created in what we call a project, and the project is the way that we are organizing the different clusters, and maybe you organize those projects by user groups, or maybe you organize it by environments, for example, development test, maybe you have different projects for all those different use cases. So as you can see, when you log into Couchbase Capella, we have one database called testcb, status is healthy, it's running in Google Cloud, right? So again, go ahead.
What does that mean that it's running in Google
Okay,
Cloud?
that's a very good question. So what we're logged on here is what we call the control plane. So the control plane is where you basically do all the management and operational of your clusters themselves. We have something else we call the data plane. The data plane is where the actual Couchbase clusters or databases reside.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we're saying, even though we're running this UI or this Capella control plane in a region in AWS, we give customers the ability to deploy across 3 cloud providers, either GCP, AWS, or Azure. And then we support a set of regions to deploy that in. So for example, in this one, it's actually the Couchbase cluster is running in USC, South Carolina, in GCP.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So when I do that deployment, is that deploying something into my GCP environment using an existing project, or is that deploying in an account owned by Couchbase that then gets wired into projects I have in GCP?
The latter.
Okay.
So it's technically your VPC on behalf of Couchbase, or I guess the other way around. We deploy it on behalf of the customer, but it's actually running in Couchbase's VPC, not the customer's VPC. But then we give the customer the ability via either VPC peering or private links to connect the application into that Couchbase cluster in that VPC. Does that help?
Yeah, so I either have the option to peer to the VPC or the VNet in Azure, whatever it is,
right,
and talk to the instance of Couchbase that way. Or alternatively, if the cloud supports the private link concept where you can drop the network adapter in my network, I could do that too.
Yes, exactly. Or the third thing is we give internet access.
Yeah, so you can set up a public endpoint.
Which is exactly, I'm going to demo today. Exactly that.
All right, I'll stop asking.
No, that's fine. That's good. All good questions. That's great. It helps me.
And on the tenancy side then, so it's your VPC, but what's the tenancy look like as far as me worried about data?
Yeah, so we have it totally siloed. So it's all separate. There's no noisy neighbors. When a customer signs up, they get their own tenancy that's in their own VPC on behalf of, Couchbase sets that up for them. But there's no shared, you're not sharing resources among customers. Great, thank you. So if I dive into the actual database. So when we look at the database, we have certain monitoring via the UI. By default, we display 4. There's many more monitoring tools, and just because we don't display them doesn't mean it's not being monitored. So this is just from the UI perspective. You can access these through endpoints. So you can hook it up into like a Grafana, because we have Prometheus running within Couchbase itself, or the Capella. So what I wanted to show is just different access patterns that we give you. So we have query. So for example, this is just a simple SQL query accessing a bucket called travel sample that I've loaded in that comes with Couchbase by default. And if I execute that query, you get it displayed in the JSON format, right? So it gives certain metrics of how long it took, the elapsed time. One of the things I want to point out is we do have what we call an index advisor. So if, for example, you have a developer that needs to improve the speed of their query, they can figure out, okay, what indexes are they using today? We can give recommendations, assuming that maybe they can make some improvements. So just at a high level, we do give that capability for developers for performance tuning.
It's like to do a quick explain, right?
Right. So exactly, it's using the explain plan. So we also have that, to your question, is we give the explain. We'll show it pictorially as well as in a text. So sometimes when customers may have issues with, or not issues, performance tuning things, they'll share the explain plan with us as a solutions engineer, and we'll assist them with some of that tuning.
Gotcha.
Now, we do have the concept of buckets. So again, we have the travel sample bucket. So that's where your data resides. So if I have that bucket, it tells you how many documents. We have memory and disk. And one of the things Jeff pointed out was we now have the ephemeral bucket concept. So you can actually deploy a memory-only bucket for like caching and session store use cases. The storage is Couchbase or Magma, Couch Store. Couch Store is our original storage engine. We have an approved one called Magma that has the ability to put more data in disk opposed to having everything in memory. So just kind of some highlights. When we look at the documents themselves, again, we have the concept of a bucket, a scope, and a collection. If you do not specify a scope and collection, it automatically will, no pun intended, default to the default scope and collection. And if I want to do just a quick key value get, I can do that. Hold on. And I get the document, it displays the contents of the document. And then if I want to actually look at the document itself, it'll display it in JSON format. So you can look at it if you so choose. And then there's certain metadata information associated with those documents. As I move down, we were talking about indexes. So in order to run your SQL++ queries, you need an index, right? You need we have the concept of a primary key index, but essentially that's just indexes all the documents. Is very inefficient. So if you're starting off in development and you just kind of want to get going, you can define that primary key index, but you really then want to define the appropriate index to support those queries. We do have search capabilities. So we define a travel, again, a full text search index. Again, the index definition for this, I'm not going to go into the details, but essentially is indexing everything within the travel sample bucket. It's not very efficient, but it gets the job done, especially for the purposes of my demo. So those are those are the different data access patterns that we have. And then when I go into settings, basically this gives you a summary of the settings. And I'm going to skip around a bit just for the sake of time and to show what the next step I'm going to get to. And essentially to the question about the common connect string. So as you can see from the internet, if you want to use a common connect string, you can use this connect string here. And what essentially that does, it connects to the Couchbase cluster, and then it will resolve to the number of nodes within the Couchbase cluster itself. The other thing, in order to connect, you're going to have to, this again is connecting via the internet, you're going to have to allow certain IPs, or not certain IPs, the IPs that you want to allow to connect. So for example, the top one is the Couchbase Playground that I'm gonna show you, and then the bottom is actually my laptop. So I can run different applications from my laptop if I want to, so it allows me to connect. So again, we do have the VPC peering option. I don't have that configured for this. And then you also need a username and password to connect to the appropriate bucket.
For those, the public access,
Yeah.
is there an implied deny all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you explicitly have to allow IPs. It doesn't allow all by
No.
default.
Yeah.
It denies all by default.
In cloud, do you support connecting via any managed identity?
To the control plane, yes. Currently to the data plane, you still need a username password. But that is certainly, we've gotten feedback from customers to your point.
Is there an integration with Couchbase to something like HashiCorp Vault so you can dynamically generate credentials?
That I'm not exactly sure. I know there's been talk about it, but I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not confident with whether we're integrated with HashiCorp.
It's in the plan.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
All
what I
right.
thought.
Let me try to restate what I think you said
Sure.
regarding the IAM question. So I can authenticate when I'm creating databases, maintaining it. I can do that through IAM.
Yes.
But when I'm when I'm querying the database,
Doing that via an application, you cannot, or via our SDK.
Okay.
Currently, we still need a username password. So for this example, this username password, I created a user called DBuser, and I basically just gave it access to all the buckets within the cluster. Even if I create a new one, they'll have access to it. I say all scopes, but you can get down a little bit more granular and access. You can either do read, write, only read, or only write at this time.
I'm going to interrupt you again.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all good.
Because a lot of us are operations folks.
Sure.
So we're curious about all right, how do I automate this? How do I enable my developers to consume this in a way that suits them? So some of them might be happy going into this control portal and clicking around, but a lot of them are going to want to invoke this through Terraform or scripting, or I might want to wire this into some sort of developer portal.
Yes.
So what sort of integrations do you have out of the box, or examples that we could leverage?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So currently we do have a Terraform example to use that accesses our external APIs, public APIs, to do a lot of what you're talking about. To be straightforward, it's not as mature as we would like it to be. Mm-hmm. So there is a separate project going on, and that we're expecting by Q3 of this year to have a more complete solution for folks like yourself who want to automate everything, which, I mean, most people do, right?
But you also have an SDK, right? That devs would interact.
Well, the SDKs, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So from a dev perspective, we do have the SDKs, and that's probably a good segue into this, because I want to be conscious of time a bit, because our CTOs should be speaking relatively shortly. So, sorry.
Just quick on this one, because who is the consumer of this endpoint? Is it an ops? Well, I point to you, like I'm the nerdy ops guy.
Yes.
I do this and then give my Couchbase endpoints to the developer, or can I basically sub this out to my developer and give them that you can only do these things? But
I guess that's a organizational choice, right? Because you're going to have the the API keys, and do you want to share them with developers, or how much control do you want to give developers to do X, Y, and Z? Maybe in certain environments you do. I'm a former Oracle DBA. I didn't want to give control to any developers. So
no admin access.
Now I'm imagining more of a workflow scenario where a developer wants to deploy an application using Couchbase.
Yeah.
They fill out a form. On the back end, it's provisioning the Couchbase environment for them. And then they get back the username and password and connection string.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
That's what you get back. You use that in your application and be happy, and leave me alone.
So let me show you just really like 4 different examples of SDKs. So to your point, right? So I have my username password already here, but if I want the actual connect string, I just go down here and copy it. I plug that into my playground, and then I start my session. Now, this is something our developer advocacy group created. Again, it's just trying to give developers access and get familiar with Couchbase and the different SDK support. So essentially, it's almost like a tutorial, right? I can choose these different SDKs. We support more than these. But if I just, for example, choose Python, and it gives you certain examples of the different ways to access Couchbase, or not ways to access Couchbase. You're going to access Couchbase or Capella the same way. It's depending on what those data access patterns are and how you're going to execute the code. So as you can see, this is just a Python key value get. We have our password authentication DB user with the password. We have the connect string. We open the cluster. We attach to the travel sample bucket. And basically, we go and get a key for airline _10. And then we print it out. So if I just run this, it's essentially going to go out, get the key for airline 10, and display the contents of that document. So there's your simple, very simple key value get. Now, as I move across, we'll show you, again, a simple query. So SQL++, again, you're connecting to that connect string. You're attaching to that bucket, essentially, and then you're running this query. Select name, city, state from travel sample, where type equals a hotel and city equals Malibu. And we're limiting it at 5 because we don't want to return too much. And then we're just displaying down here the hotel with the name and city. So again, another access pattern for SQL makes easier for organizations that are transitioning from relational database to a familiar language, and we give you that capability.
Now, on how much of the performance profile and configuration is user side? So stuff like setting when you chose to do sharding, whether do we have control over compaction and different compaction algorithms?
Yeah, so you do have control of that, but you do have it on the Capella side or the database or server side. Really, the SDK side doesn't have control over certain of those things.
So yeah, on the admin portal.
Yes, admin portal. Then you do have certain controls over that. Now, because it is a managed service, we don't, for like a self-managed Couchbase server, you have more control.
Right.
We're managing it. We've implemented it with best practices. We don't want to, I don't want to say I guess we don't want to give too much control to the customers and inadvertently maybe, messing things up.
And then today, are you going to be covering configuration and design of the database to the workloads, or is that another thing?
Yeah, that would have to be another thing.
Okay, then I'll reserve my question.
Yeah, great. Okay, sounds good. And then there is a subdocument lookup in terms of, again, this is efficiency, right? So you don't want to return whole the document. You just want to return a portion of it. Again, same connection. We're going to get that same key, airline 10, and we're just going to get the country out of that document. Again, for efficiencies, it's going to be more performant. You're passing back less data between the application and the Capella server. So again, we have that subdocument lookup.
And how much tuning, auto tuning do you have, or sorry, I shouldn't say that. How much tuning of any kind do you do on the Couchbase side as, let's say I've got one application that's extremely high read and another one that's extremely high write, where would I need to move to self-hosted Couchbase to tune it to that level?
Not necessarily. So the way you would probably do that is you would have, and this gets into the question in terms of how do you architect it, right? So you're going to have different buckets for different use cases, potentially, and those buckets can have different memory profiles and memory quotas to achieve what you're trying to get. And then you'll have your individual indexes defined appropriately.
Is there anything that comes from Couchbase to me because it's managed and you probably have greater insights into patterns of use, or is it purely user-driven? It's
user-driven, but we will assist you with that. So again, it's a platform as a service, so it's not a SaaS. So there is some, operational and management that the customer does have to do.
Great, thanks.
Okay. And then lastly, just a simple, same connection, but we're just going to do a simple full text search. And we're looking for the word swanky in the travel hotels.
As you should.
Because we all want to stay at a swanky hotel. And again, it's not going to return it, but it's basically found these documents and it gives you the keys of those documents And then, you can then do what you will with that, for that use case. So. And that's really the end of the demo. I just wanted to show you, get a flavor of what Capella looks like, and the different data access patterns, and really how simple it is to use.
Do you get any questions from people that you're doing a lot of different data patterns here versus I would say I'm going to choose, I want an influx for my timescale, I want RocksDB for my key value, like where they want very specific, localized, tuned things?
Yeah, so we do get questions like that and say,
Like the business layer makes sense. I really makes sense how you do it. I'm just curious at the technical layer whether you get a bit more grief.
we might get some grief in terms of if it's a very specific usage, but you got to remember what Jeff said. We have multi-dimensional scaling, so you only have to deploy the services that you need.
Right.
So if you want, ultimate fast, you just deploy the data service and you use the key value gets and puts, and you're flying. And you don't have to have all the other services involved in it.
Cool.
So